Good morning, London. It is Thursday, October 4th, 2012. I'm Bob Metz.
I'm Robert Vaughan.
And this is Just Right on CHRW 94.9 FM.
And we'll be with you from now until noon.
No, not right wing. Just right. We're going to start off with something more along the line of modern-day Martin Luthers, is what you were calling them. Robert, you had an interesting weekend this weekend, and you're going to tell us about it.
Yeah, I don't know whether or not the people I'll be talking about would like or appreciate the fact that I'm likening them to a Martin Luther back in 1517 when he nailed his proclamation on the castle church at Wittenberg. But I got that impression when I went to a meeting this Sunday, but I'll get into that shortly. I just want to harken back to September 11th, 2001, and I don't know about you, Bob, when I looked at the news that day, it didn't go unnoticed by me that there was dancing in the streets in many Muslim nations. Quite literally, they were dancing in the streets. It's not a secret that millions of Muslims around the world, and even those living in the Western countries, despise Western values and refuse to integrate into the free and civilized world. And even today, we have prominent American and Canadian Muslim organizations and leaders who are in league with the Muslim Brotherhood and the Wahhabi mullahs in Saudi Arabia and are working tirelessly to destroy the West and every good it stands for. But as we've said on this show before, not all Muslims are against freedom and capitalism. Not all Muslims are our enemy. But where are they? Why don't we hear from them? For the celebrity few, like Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who do speak out, there are death threats and intimidation. Many keep silent for fear of retribution from the greater Muslim community. It's obvious. But on Sunday, I was invited by Professor Salim Mansour from the Political Science Department here at Western, and a frequent guest on our show, to attend and video the launch of a new voice for many Muslims in Canada who have remained silent. And the new organization is called Muslims Facing Tomorrow. And Salim is the vice president of MFT, while activist and author Raheel Raza is the president. And Raheel Raza comes from the Muslim Canadian Congress, MCC. At the meeting, journalist and television host Christine Williams spoke. And no stranger to you, Bob, as she's had you on her show several times.
Couldn't count them. I have boxes full of audio and DVDs.
I guess we can count Christine as a friend.
Yes.
And the keynote was delivered by Dr.Zuhdi Jasser, an ex-USA Navy SEAL Lieutenant Commander, a Muslim, and the founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, AIFD. Now, what I heard at that event is precisely what I've been longing to hear from an organization of Muslims. A call to reject all violence, to embrace Western values and freedoms, including the freedom to offend, as with the Innocence of Muslims video trailer that was on the internet and sparked so much violence.
Yes, they do exist. I've been on CTS, on Christine Williams' show with other Muslims who totally agreed with my points of view on no censorship and issues of religious debate. I think it might be a shock to most people.
It was a refreshing surprise to me. I didn't hear a single note of reticence in their condemnation of those Muslims calling for the curtailment of free speech or any other individual right protected by both the U.S. and Canadian constitutions. In fact, during the question period, one man stood up. Now get this, Bob. A man stood up at the back of the room, gave his name, and declared that he was a Muslim apostate, which, by the way, according to some in Islam, is punishable by death immediately. Boom, you're dead. But he got up and suggested that the crowd give up their belief in superstition. There were no gasps of shock or anything like that at all. In fact, a few people applauded. This is a room of about 160 Muslims, by my count, and I did stand up and count them, about 160 Muslims, mostly Muslims, and he declared his apostasy without any fear. I knew I was in the right room. Paul McKeever just posted a blog post last night or this morning, and I'll quote from it. He says, "Your enemy is not Islam. Your enemy is that imam or that Islamic organization who has called upon trustees and other politicians to turn your child's public school into a mosque. In truth, their attitude towards your objection is, if you lack the gonadal fortitude to condemn us, you are handing control of your future to us, sucker." And he's absolutely correct. Ayn Rand called it the sanction of the victim.
Oh, that's why
we let it happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, while ideas matter, it's not ideas which kill people. It's people who kill people. It's not the notion of Islam which kills us. It's individual Muslims. Those who espouse evil should be routed out as evil, and likewise, as with this group, those who espouse freedom and peace and capitalism and justice should be lauded for their courage to do so while surrounded by evil men. I've wrestled with the apparent contradiction of what I understand to be Islam and the individual actions of Muslims. And that evening I listened as speaker after speaker affirmed that there are many types of Islam. There are Muslims who, much as many Christians do with the Bible, pick and choose verses from the Quran to believe and those not to believe. Dr. Jasser outright rejected the notion that, for example, Muhammad consummated a marriage with 9-year-old Aisha. He simply doesn't believe it. He rejected the call to kill infidels or Jews, regardless of what it says in the Quran. We've seen this before in Christianity, as many choose to reject those aspects of the Bible which are inconsistent with civilization and have relegated such passages to history and myth. They may now be, this is how a religion reforms itself, and that's why I sort of liken them to a modern-day Martin Luther. By the way, that's Martin Luther, you know, the monk. Not Martin Luther King, yeah, Martin Luther, the German monk. Okay.
Actually, that should be said, because even I made that mistake when you first mentioned it this morning. I just took it for granted, you know.
You know, it's interesting to hear Dr. Jasser also take on the Muslim notion of taqiyya. Now, I had this going through my mind, but he was asked by conservative blogger Dr. Roy Eapen, who happened to be in the room as well, how does one know that they're not being hoodwinked by moderate Muslims? Because taqiyya means basically to lie, to lie to infidels, yeah. He said, Dr. Jasser said that by putting his position on the public record and doing it consistently through word and action, that should convince people of his sincerity. Not necessarily in those words he said it, but yes, that's what he was
that's the only thing that can, sure.
Yes, constant, consistent action and words. He also called for a return to exegesis, which, by the way, if you remember my interview with Lord Christopher Monckton, he talked about the loss of exegesis in Islam to be quite a failure of the religion. And it, for those who don't know, exegesis is a critical interpretation and analysis of text, and in this particular case, the Quran.
Sort of like self-examination, an inward look at one's own beliefs.
Right, looking at deeper meanings to things, taking things not necessarily literally, but looking at them as allegories and things like that. An exegesis is a study and interpretation critically. And Islam seems to have lost that and have put their faith in the imams and clergy of Islam. And Dr. Jasser in his book, new book, basically says Islam has no clergy. And he's absolutely correct in that sense. He looks at Islam as a very personal thing, and he interprets it the way he interprets it, and not other Muslims interpret it the way they do. We have to take on evil ideas and those who harbor them. When a Muslim stands up publicly to denounce anti-Semitism, misogyny, violence, homophobia, arranged marriages to 6-year-olds, and acts consistently to show that he is sincere, what more do we need to know to accept the fact that Islam to him is completely different than it is to Osama bin Laden, the Wahhabis, and members of the Muslim Brotherhood? So it was a very interesting evening on Sunday. I videotaped the whole thing and all of the speeches. I'm putting together the videos now, and they should be on Just Right's YouTube channel within the next couple of days, and that is youtube.com/JustRightMedia.
Yeah.
Look forward to that.
I was going to ask you, too, did the specific issue of separation of church and state come up at all during the weekend?
Yes, they specifically talked about the separation of church and mosque. Specifically, there's no politicization of Islam, they were saying. All of the speakers, Rahil Raza, Christine Williams, who, by the way, is a Christian from what I know, and Dr. Jasser.
You know, I asked that in light of a completely different issue that I noticed lately, that Russia, under the guise of Putin, right, is trying to reunite the church and state. And that, I'm starting to think that's maybe what the whole Pussy Riot thing's all about.
Interesting. One step forward, two steps back.
Yes, I wonder. It's an interesting thing that might